Be alert to let everybody know we're recording. So now we come to page 4, and the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. So we're in the midst of this now, and this is the 3rd thought that turns the mind to the Dharma, the suffering of samsara. So here we read the text that says, consider the suffering of beings in the 6 realms of samsara. Doing so, great fear and dread arise in the heart. In the 3 lower realms, and even in the 3 higher ones, there is not an instant of absolute happiness. I will avoid the root cause of my samsaric existence and practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. So we can see that human suffering has 3 parts. There is the all-pervading suffering of composite phenomena. There is the suffering of change. And there is the suffering of suffering, birth, old age, sickness, and death. And also there is suffering from separation from loved ones, enduring those who are not dear to us, and not finding what we desire, and protecting what we already have. These are the sufferings of the human realm, of human beings. And human beings have the psychophysical drama of being in the 6 realms, being in the God realm, the Deva realm, the jealous God realm, the human realm. Those are the 3 higher realms. And the 3 lower realms are the hell realm, the hungry ghost realm, and the animal realm. So take a few moments and contemplate the meaning of the suffering of samsara. Okay. Now we go to page 5. And karma, cause and result. Karma is the Sanskrit word that means action. So for there to be an action, there needs to be a cause. And then from the action comes a result. So we need to be able to understand that our placement, where we are in the ocean of suffering, where we are in samsara, the psychophysical drama that we experience as human beings, is the result of the karma that we have accumulated over our lifetime, past lifetimes, etc. So understanding how this operates is very important to us, to be able to purify our karma, to allow it to rise up, and then to purify it so that our result becomes a clear, clean result. So we recite this text. Even if one were a king at the time of death, one's possessions, enjoyments, friends, and retinue will not follow. But wherever that sentient being goes, his karma follows after him like a shadow. The fruits of one's positive karma is happiness. Suffering is the fruit of negative karma. The inexorable karmic causation is the mode of abiding in all dharmas. Henceforth, practice the Dharma by distinguishing between what should be practiced and what should be given up. So contemplate karma, cause and result. Okay, thank you. So tonight we're going to study karma, cause, and result a little bit more. This is our, I believe, our sixth session of the 8-week cycle. So this is the sixth. This is karma, cause, and result. So does anybody have any questions or comments that you'd like to make before we get started on anything that we've done so far this evening?
Lance, I have I do have actually a question. So going through the process we just went through as the process, so everyone should do this like every day, just at some point in your day to stop and ponder these four things, like at any point. It doesn't have to be before or after a meditation session. It can just be when you have that space to go through the process.
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's very, very helpful to be mindful of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so it's,
Okay.
we're adding that structure to our lives.
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
You. Yeah. Okay, so we're on page 9 of our outline book, so you can follow along with that. It's also chapter 6 in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So that is the Lam Rim book that we are following. Lam Rim means stages of the path. So the Jewel Ornament of Liberation is the guidebook to becoming enlightened, the guidebook to becoming a Buddha, this book right here. So this book is about 1,000 years old, and is everything that we really need to know is there, but it is, a little bit abstract in some parts. So there's many other texts to support it and many teachings to support this major textbook, this learning the stages of the path. So now we need to understand karma. What is karma? We looked at last week, we looked at the psychophysical drama of being a human being and the 6 realms that we fall into. And the question becomes, how do we get there? Why are we there? And we're there because we have precipitated these actions with their results that have brought us to these situations, to these conditions that we live in. Right now, we are performing a karma. We are performing an action. We're entering into this discussion of Dharma. So this is a virtuous practice. This is very good. So the cause for this was we wanted to understand more about ourselves. We wanted to understand more about meditation. We wanted to understand more about Buddhism. We wanted to understand more about spirituality. Any of these things, maybe a little bit of all these things in combination. And then we take this action of participating in this conversation. And then the result is that we have a more virtuous point of view. We have a more responsible point of view towards ourselves and towards other beings. That we begin to act in a way in which we would like to see everyone act. That they're taking responsibility for doing good things and so on, and not bringing harm, not bringing suffering to themselves or to other beings. So this is the result that we are looking for. And invariably, we'll be building on that. You know, it's a process, and we're layering time and time, because as we do this over and over again, we layer on top of it. And the more of it that we do, the more habitual it becomes to us. It becomes our habitual tendency to be virtuous, to do good things, and to be mindful of these teachings. So these teachings are not exclusive teachings in the regard that you can't go to other philosophic or spiritual teachers and receive teachings like this. And they may have different titles, and they may have different reference points and different terminology and so on, but the essence of them would be the same. So Buddhism is not exclusive, but it is very thorough, it is very comprehensive, and it is very accessible. And for these reasons are major reasons why we study the Buddhism, why we follow the Buddhism, why we take up the practice of Buddhism, because it is so accessible and so meaningful to us and so rich in its scripture and its studies and so on like that. So here it says, what is karma? And there's karma of the mind, there's karma of thought, body, and speech. So there's karmas of all these different things that we do, many different ways in which karma, these actions that we engage in, have results. So in karma of the mind, there is the karma of consciousness. We need to understand consciousness as best we can. So that's a very big topic, and one that we can have a lot of discussion about. There is karma of thought, that which is created by the mind, the action of the mind, that just by thinking of something is creating a karma if we begin to act on it. We act on it in our mind. It changes our mind. You know, that we can change the way in which we think. Our aspirations can change. Our virtues can change. Our non-virtues can change. We're going to look at that in just a couple minutes and understand more about what that means. So there is meritorious conduct. There is meritorious karma and result, which is wholesome. There is non-meritorious karma and result, which is unwholesome. And there is karma and result of unshakable meditative concentration, which is what we want our state of mind to be. We really want to be in a state of meditation all the time. That's one of the goals. That's one of the stages. That's the stages of meditation. That's the goal of stages of meditation, of stages of the path to be in the meditative state all the time. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going around with our eyes closed and we're sitting in this position all the time, but that we take this meditation with us wherever we go. And that this awareness, this meditation, results in this awareness of where we are, who we are, what is going on, and so on. So we take that meditation with us wherever we go. So is that meditative concentration. So these are classifications as they're listed here in this book. So there are 4 complete elements of karma. So in other words, what is karma? How does karma work? What are the mechanics of karma? So first, there has to be a motivation to want to do something. So if we use the grossest of these things is to say we're going to kill something, kill somebody. It's very dramatic, I know, but nevertheless, everybody can relate to it in some form or another. So we have this motivation to kill somebody. And then we have to have the object of who it is that we want to kill. So we have to have this in our mind too. So that has to be there. And then there has to be the action that we took to do the killing, to actually have killed someone. And then finally, there has to be a completion to that killing, which is a satisfaction of the killing. So these are the 4 component parts of what it is to have a complete karma take place. Now, we can have accidental things. We can have things that happen without being motivated to do these things premeditatedly. There can be, we might not have a clear object in our mind of what we want this to be. It can be more accidental and so on. And all these things are mitigating reasons. We can go ahead and do the karma. We may have the motivation. We may have the object of motivation. We do it, but then we may not be glad that we did it. We may be sorry that we did it, that we recognize we did the wrong thing. And so all these things have mitigating circumstances to influence the severity, if you will, of the result of what the karma has been. So for the karma to be truly manifest, it has to have the motivation, it has to have the object, it has to have the action of the motivation and the object, and it has to have the satisfactory result or the feeling of satisfaction that you're glad that you did this. So then we look at the characteristics. So here we need to look at the 10 virtues and the 10 non-virtues. So we look at it we break it down into a couple different ways. First, we'll look at it as the non-virtues. And we look at it that there are 3 non-virtues of the body. There are 4 non-virtues of the speech. And then there are 3 non-virtues of the mind. So this helps us to understand, to remember these things and to become mindful of this, because that's what all this is about, is to recognize who we are and recognize our goodness, to recognize our virtue, to recognize our non-virtue. So that if we are behaving in a non-virtuous way, we can recognize that and be able to apply the antidotes to be able to overcome those non-virtues and change that non-virtue into virtue. So to do that, we can't take these things for granted. We're good people. Most of us are doing good things all the time. But meanwhile, we're still in this ocean of suffering. There are still days when we feel like that we are really in a place that we would rather not be in. We'd like to be liberated from this place. We'd like to be free. We have a sense that we have this enslavement that we are part of, this kind of almost imprisonment in this ocean of suffering, where everything that seems to be good turns on us and becomes very negative towards us. So we need to understand this at an elemental level. And then we can kind of rise above that. We can see how we bring that into our being and being mindful of it. And this becomes motivation for us to be good, to have good karma. So the 10 non-virtues here are 3 from the body. So the body is, the first one is taking a life. the non-virtue of killing. Then the non-virtue of stealing, taking that which is not given to us. Then there is the non-virtue of sexual misconduct. So whether this is like adultery or it's I look at it in a general sense by saying it's by coercing sexual behavior on those who are not willing to be part of that. Whatever it is, it can be all different kinds of sexual permutations of that. So we have to understand how that works and take responsibility for things, take responsibility for minors, take responsibilities for marriages, and so on and so on and so on. So these are the three of the body, the non-virtues of the body: killing, stealing, taking that which was not given to us, and sexual misbehavior. Then the four of the speech. The speech is what we say. What we do, what we say is action that can be very penetrating, that can be very hurtful, that can create a great deal of suffering in people's lives and so on, and thereby affect us because we are saying these things, and it's causing us to solidify, to stabilize that negativity. So these four of the speech are lying, just out and out lying to ourselves, to other people. Divisive speech. Divisive speech is being in an organization or whatever and trying to drive people apart and saying things that drive people apart. So whether it's a one-on-one relationship or it's a group of people or something, but divisive speech that is going to split people's support of a relationship or an organization. Then harsh words. Harsh words can be using swear words, can be talking loudly, can be very powerful, speaking with great intensity and hurting people by the harshness of the way in which they say things, the loudness of it and the words that they choose to use, calling somebody stupid or, swear words or whatever like that. To not use this harsh speech causes great suffering for people and to ourselves. And then idle talk. Idle talk would be like gossip, would be talking about things just for the sake of talking. How many of us just, start rambling on and we start getting in and talking about things that really we know very little about, but we may have opinions about. But then we start getting into the minutia of all these opinions and so on. And we start making things up. We start rationalizing some of our emotions, and we start creating this gossip. We start creating rumors and so on out of idle talk. So those are the four non-virtues of speech. Then the three non-virtues of the mind. So they are covetousness, that which we are envious of other beings may have that we wish we had. Maybe it's a spouse, or maybe it's a possession, maybe it's a car, maybe it's a job, maybe it's some kind of power, but for us to be coveting that of what someone else has. And it kind of stays in our mind. We may not even express it, but it's there in our mind. So it's kind of like it forms jealousy, creates jealousy. Then harmful thought, thinking that someone has done something that made us suffer, a wrong to us, and that we wish that they have a suffering that is equal to or greater than that. oh, so and so, said these things to me. I hope that somebody really crushes them with their words. I'm not a very good debater. I'm not a very good person to raise my voice. I don't do that. But I hope somebody comes along and really puts that person in their place. Or I saw somebody, I heard about somebody, really harming somebody, killed somebody. I hope this person really suffers a terrible, terrible death. I really want them to do that. So to have this harmful thought for someone else, that they have done something and that they should have these terrible things happen to them. So to keep harboring that harmful thought is very non-virtuous. And then the next one is called wrong views. So the wrong view is about morality and is about karma itself. That to have a sense of morality means that one has to understand that there is this invisible law, this natural law of reciprocity, this natural law of karma, that what you do is going to come back to you. If you do good deeds are going to come back to you. If you do bad deeds, then suffering deeds are going to come back to you. And that we can transform good deeds into bad deeds by doing bad actions. And likewise, we can take bad deeds and transform them with good actions and transform them into good results. So to recognize that that is possible, that we can do that, is the proper view. To not have that view is to have a wrong view of morality, to understand that we are part of this dynamic of morality that we are in society, that we are in the midst of in our phenomenal nature. So these are the 10 non-virtuous deeds, the non-virtues. 3 of the body, 3 of the speech, 3 of the mind. So now we look at the 10 virtues, which would be the inverse of these non-virtues. So if we look at that, we say that instead of taking life in non-virtuous, we protect life. Wherever we can, we protect life. Whether it's animals or it's other human beings, whether it's insects, that we get in the habit of protecting life everywhere that we can. We become mindful of life, and that all sentient beings are beings who have some kind of birth, and they have some kind of life, and they respond to stimuli. They respond to pain. They respond to good things, sunshine. They may respond to having water and nutrients and things that they need, and that they have a death, that there is a death, and they may try to, and sentient beings will try to survive. They will do things to try and continue their life. And they will, so sentient beings, so you can say insects fall into that category, animals fall into that category, not just human beings. And there are many of these beings we call sentient beings, these conscious beings that have these properties of birth, old age, sickness, and death that may be invisible to us. So we respect all things all around us as being potential beings that maybe we don't recognize, that are in the earth, that are in the atmosphere, things that we can't recognize. So we have an appreciation for sentient beings. So we do everything we can to protect life. So the non-virtue of stealing, taking that which is not given to us. Maybe it's, taking people's possessions, stealing their car, stealing their spouses, stealing their children. Maybe it's stealing job positions from them. Maybe it's stealing money. People who are unscrupulous financiers who find ways to sell people, securities that they know are bad securities, bad investments, but yet they do that, and then they accumulate great wealth based on the fact that they've taken all this money from people who really, trusted them, and they couldn't afford to make these losses, to suffer these losses and so on. So this is the non-virtue of stealing. However, if we are practicing generosity with people instead of the non-virtue of stealing, instead we practice generosity with beings. Now we use whatever skillful means we have to be able to convince people to be able to give us their trust, to give us their money, to give us their respect, to give us their votes, and so on like that in the case of politicians and so on, that we are generous with the gifts that they have given us, and we are using that for their benefit. We're not using it selfishly for ourselves. We're using it to help other beings in all many different ways that we can. So we become mindful of that virtue of generosity. Then the non-virtue of sexual misconduct. We have to be able to maintain moral ethics. We know what is right and wrong. We know when we are forcing ourselves on someone who is not a willing partner, someone who is not capable of making decisions. We should be aware of the scars that these kinds of misdeeds, sexual misdeeds, can leave on people, young people. If we were to go around and take advantage of children and take advantage of young teenagers and so on, that it can scar them for the rest of their lives. We hear about these things all the time. And maybe we've had these experiences ourselves. And maybe we've repressed these things. Maybe we've had thoughts to enact in these things. So we have to develop our moral conduct. We have to, our moral ethics to be able to cut those thoughts off, to not allow us just to simply suppress them, but to cut them off, to establish that there are certain rules that we live by, and we have to adhere to those rules, and not selfishly take advantage of other beings and so on. So the morality of the virtue of creating those moral ethics for the sake of protecting the not causing suffering, sexual misconduct with other beings. So that's 3 of the body. So then the 4 of the mind, of the virtues, are instead of lying to people for all different reasons, there's so many different reasons, and there's white lies, and then there's very dark lies, and lies to manipulate people. There's all different kinds of lies. But if we always pronounce the truth, if we always speak the truth, even if we don't know something, instead of lying, making up a story, we say, I don't know. We just say, I don't know. And that's very liberating. Instead of trying to make up some kind of a story that gives you some kind of power, if only in that conversation. And then you have to remember that lie, that group of lies that you just told. And then all these groups of lies then become like this spider's web of this net of all these lies that you tell. And you find that your life becomes this web of lies. And you have to keep track of what you've said to who and so on like this. And it becomes very overwhelming. And many, many people lead these lies. They know that they're lies, but they don't want to accept that they made a mistake. They don't want to say that they made a mistake. So they continue the lie. They live in the lie. Many people do that in marriages. They do that in jobs. They do that when they go to school and so on. They enter into relationships, into commitments, and then they begin to lie to themselves. Oh, this is what I really want, but really they're recognizing that, you know what, this is wrong. I made a mistake for any number of reasons, and so we're not judging that. it's up to the individual to judge that. But what we should do when we recognize that we're in a relationship, or that we're in some kind of a commitment that we shouldn't be in, we should reverse and say, I've got to get out of this relationship. I've got to do something. Maybe we can fix it. Maybe in a love relationship or something, you can fix it, but maybe not. And we have to look at that and see what that is. So by telling the truth all the time prevents us from furthering the complication of the lies. So it's very simple, and it's liberating. Once you tell the truth about it, then you feel much better. You feel that a weight has been lifted off of your shoulders. Your mind has been opened up. You may have a new set of problems to deal with, but at least they are honest problems. They are truthful problems. And you will gain respect from that, from yourself and from other people. Then the next one of the speech is when we talk divisive speech as the non-virtue, but if we harmonize, instead of to be divisive, if we harmonize with people. So if we're in an organization, say, and let's say that there's a conversation that's going on, and that we're trying to divide the people. Let's say there's 10 people in a group, and I'm trying to one by one get these people to convince them to be on my side or something like that. And then I go to the next person, and I get another person and another person after that, and trying and slowly putting wedges between all these people and so on, this divisiveness. Instead of doing that, to harmonize, to be able to find what the commonality, why it is that we came together in the first place. And instead of trying to divide people, that we find ways to bring ourselves together and to make peace within ourselves and to be able to grow. And if we have problems that might be the causes for divisiveness, if we had those problems, to work on them slowly together, to find out how we can harmonize those, how we can bring them in, and maybe other people can find solutions to those problems through the harmony. So the harmony, if you know anything about music, if you know anything about singing and so on, that there's, one person might be singing what we might call the root note. And then there's another person who's singing, a note somewhere above that. And then there's another person singing a note below that. And then, but they all harmonize with each other, and it sounds beautiful. It becomes a one voice, a new voice that has this real depth to it. Instead of just being, if everybody's all the same, very monotone, it can become very boring and so on. It can become very divisive, as we're talking about here. So to see that there is beauty in the harmony, to be able, and if you've ever worked in an organization and seen where divisiveness has been terrible, but then when there was someone who had the wisdom and the skillful means to speak up, to be able to harmonize the group, how beautiful that relationship for all beings involved became.
Lance?
Yes, sir.
I accept harmonizing as an ideal.
Yes.
But it seems to me divisive speech is sometimes necessary. You have to stand up for a principle, regardless, even though others are on another side. Is divisive speech always a non-virtue, and is harmonizing always possible? I'm not sure.
Well, it's a good question. So I think that is expressed in the next one, which is speaking peacefully and politely instead of speaking harshly. So we can see differences. You're correct. There could be differences between people and organizations and so on. But how do you harmonize? How do you bring them together instead of just saying, "Oh, I'm going to leave, and you are a bunch of idiots, and I don't want to be part of you," and so on like that, instead of finding out that there are ways to bringing people together by being more polite about it and being able to say, "Look, we've got a problem. can we sit down and can we work this out? Can we all say something, about how we feel about this and work this out? Is that not valid? Is that make sense?
It's valid as an ideal.
Of course.
I just don't think it's always possible.
Well, sometimes maybe it's so, but we have to, we do work in an ideal, we are trying to create an ideal world for ourselves. We are trying to create a way in which we are virtuous. And that may be idealistic in this non-virtuous world, this ocean of suffering. But nevertheless, do we swim with the tide or do we swim against the tide? How do we conduct ourselves? We have to take responsibility for that.
But sometimes failing to speak divisively can cause you to go with a tide that's against your principles or against your morals.
Well, I understand the point, and you're correct in saying that there are times when you can't, you got to leave. But it's a question of the way you leave. Okay. Do you break everything up? I mean, does everybody say you're in that group of 10 people and you say, I'm gonna ruin this for everybody, and I'm gonna, instead of my just leaving gracefully, I'm gonna try and take everybody with me, or I'm gonna take half the people with me, or something like that.
What do you leave in your wake here?
Yeah. So does that make sense?
Yes.
So in any case, we got to be responsible for what we're doing. I mean, this is what we're doing, is examining, what our potentials are on the good side and the bad side, and that we take responsibility for what it is that we actually do.
It seems to me that speaking truth is sometimes divisive.
Well, it depends what organization you're in, and maybe you don't belong in that organization anymore.
Right. But it may just be the world you're in.
Well, that's a true fact. Otherwise, why would we want to be liberated?
Yeah.
Is that the Golden Gate Bridge, Gene?
Okay, so please, so carrying on. So harsh words, instead of, having differences of opinion and speaking, in a way that drives people away. In other words, some people can be right about what it is they're saying, but the way in which they say it is just so harmful to beings. And we've seen that, in the not too distant past. So there's lots of cases. Some people will rationalize that and say, oh, it's okay, the end justifies the means. But meanwhile, a lot of people get hurt along the way. So we have to take responsibility for that. So by learning how to make your points, but do it, elegantly, by doing it gracefully, peacefully, and politely, is just as important as if you have something divisive to say, the way in which you say it. And then the fourth thing in the four virtues, non-virtues of speech, is idle talk, that not to enter into gossip, not to enter into rumor mongering. So the virtue of that would be speaking meaningfully, that you understand the meaning, that you understand what it is you're saying, that you, if you say something about somebody or something, is it really true? And is that person there, or are you talking behind their back? Would you say the same thing if they were there, or would you only say it behind their back, so to speak? So, and that we try and recognize the truth and speak only the truth. Otherwise, we just don't engage in that conversation. We don't go down that path. We don't start those kinds of rumors. Now, I know sometimes we get involved in conversation, and in the heat of the conversation, you may say something about somebody and they're not there. And that can be, very divisive. and you maybe you try and make amends for that, but you said something and you can't take it back in people's minds now. They've heard that. And you say, oh, I apologize, but still they've heard that and so on. And it's very difficult to erase that from their psyche, So maybe you go to that person whose back you talked behind and say, you know what? I was in this meeting last night and I'd said something about you that I really apologize for. I said the wrong thing. I didn't mean to say it, or I said it wrong, or something like that. So you try and bring that around. You try and be meaningful with that, to at least, the very least, share that with the person that was slighted, so that there's a way to be able, for that person to be able to defend themselves and to be able to understand what might be happening in the dynamic of the group or the people that were involved or something like that. So that's the virtue of speaking meaningfully. So those are the 4 of the speech. And then the 3 of the mind. So the non-virtue of covetedness is practicing unattachment. When we are coveting something, we are grasping. We are grasping at it. We want it. We want to cling to it. We want that for our own, and so on. And it fosters jealousy and so on. But if we practice unattachment, if we practice to say, that's just desire, that's just lust, that's just passion, that's just greediness, I really don't need that. Or I can get that in another way that is not so harmful. And I can get it, with a degree of elegance and wholesomeness, rather than thinking of it as something that, I envy somebody and I want that. So by practicing unattachment, by simplifying our lives and our needs and so on, is the virtue of covetousness. Then harmful thought. When we're thinking bad things about somebody, we want something bad to happen to somebody. Instead, we practice loving kindness. Loving kindness, if we always take the phrase loving kindness and put an equal mark or think of it as wisdom. Loving kindness and wisdom is the same thing. Wisdom and loving kindness is the same thing. That loving kindness implies a grace. Somebody may not be wise enough to recognize the things that they're saying. They may be rumor mongering, they may be lying, they may be saying all different kinds of things, and they have causes for the reasons why they are doing those things, because they're human beings. But if we have loving kindness for them, if we have grace for them, if we have wisdom for them, we can see that there is something behind their non-virtue. They may not recognize it. We ourselves may not recognize it precisely what it is, but we know that all beings are fundamentally good beings, but we get corrupted along the way. So if we use that wisdom to be able to help ourselves understand and help those beings understand who are doing these negative things, to be able to lead them to awareness of what it is that they're doing, so that maybe they'll go back and think about what their causes are. Maybe they'll try and redeem themselves or something like that. So in other words, practicing loving kindness, practicing wisdom, practicing grace, not meeting the heat of their argument with greater heat of argument. Tempering the conversation. And then wrong views, where we don't recognize karma, cause and effect, where we don't take responsibility for that we don't recognize this invisible natural law of karma, cause and effect, that we instead, in virtue, engage in the perfect meaning. And be able to recognize that there is this law of reciprocity. There is this natural law of beings. Just like there are physical laws of gravity, just like there's physical laws of electromagnetics and the weak force and the strong force. But in the dynamics of human beings and in consciousness and so on, there is this law of reciprocity. There is this law of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That there is this karma. And for this karma, for these actions to take place, there has to be causes and conditions. And then there will be results from those actions and so on. And to recognize that as being a real thing, that is not something just imagined. There is a real thing there. And maybe you can trace back in your own life and you can think about, things that you might have done that brought you great happiness because you did good things. But also there may be things that brought you suffering because you did non-virtuous things. And I think we'd be hard pressed to be able to look at bad things that we did that had good results that we continue to feel good about if we're being honest with ourselves. We may have rationalized some things, but at the same time, there may be this recognition that what we've been doing is just suppressing these things and trying to justify our bad actions. And that's one of the interesting things about when we first begin to enter into meditation and contemplation. And we start thinking about these things. We start meditating on virtue and non-virtue, that we go through our lives. This is a rehearsal for death. And if you've heard many people who have had, the near-death experience say that their life like flashes in front of them. And these things, and many of the things that come up aren't all good things. They're things that we might have repressed for many years. If we go into analysis, psychoanalysis and so on, to find out what those repressed things are and to be able to bring them up and to be able to deal with them. And so on, to be able to treat them with wisdom, to treat them with grace, to treat them with skillful means, and to engage in the perfect meaning of what this is, and to be able to liberate those things. So as we get into our meditation, these things begin to come up. And it's uncanny, things that you haven't thought of in 34 years, all of a sudden come up, and it just becomes like it happened just yesterday, where you can go through and you can feel the emotion of that right now and so on. So what do you do with that? Well, you work to liberate it. You either, if there was suffering that was obviously caused, if you can still go back to the person who might have been the object of that suffering, or maybe you're the object of that suffering, well, whatever, you bring it up, you deal with it on a real-time basis and so on. And this is how we liberate things, not by pushing them aside, but by bringing them up. We talk about ripening karma, that we let our karmas come up. We let our karmas ripen. If we keep suppressing them, it works for the moment, temporary, but at some point, those karmas are going to come up when the conditions are ripe, when the causes are ripe. Then that seed, that karmic seed, will begin to sprout. Maybe it's a good karmic seed, but maybe it's a bad karmic seed. So our goal is to neutralize our karma, that we have no karma, that our attachments to doing good deeds, our attachments to peace, are attachments. And we cling on to them, and we grasp them, and they become food for arrogance. They become food for pride. Oh, I'm such a good person. Oh, I do all the good things. I've done all this and so on. So that becomes another source of emotion for ourselves. But if we're going through that cycle, that circle, that spiral, And as we rise up through the spiral, and the spiral gets tighter and tighter, means that we're purifying, that we're becoming simpler, that we're becoming less grasping onto anything that creates pride or arrogance for ourselves, just as anything that creates aggression for ourselves or jealousy for ourselves. Pridefulness is just as dangerous to us as jealousy is, or that hate is. But pridefulness we can rationalize that very well. So it becomes a little more insidious. But we have to recognize that. So the point here is to be able to have no karma, that there's no attachments, there's no aversions, there's no thought. What we are preparing ourselves for is liberation from being born again into this ocean of suffering. That's why we're examining all this. If you say to yourself, oh, this isn't such a bad place, I can deal with it. I've had a pretty good life. And here are all the reasons, and you can rationalize and all that. And then I'm sure, it's going to be valid at some degrees and so on like that. But, when it comes time for us to die, what kind of fear is there? What kind of suffering is there? Did we prepare ourselves for that? Do we take all those things that we have pridefulness of? Do we take those things with us when we die? Or are all those things just as temporary as our body? Are we clinging on to these three dimensions? But are there dimensions beyond what that we experience here? Is there 4 dimensions, 5 dimensions, 6 dimensions? We don't know what we don't know. And the problem with being a human being is we always think that we can know. This is the conundrum that we get ourselves locked up in. And then we begin to rationalize that which we think we know as being it. Oh, I've got it. I've perfected myself. But meanwhile, something happens to us, someone passes that we love, something, we have some kind of an accident, we get sick, something that we didn't expect, something that we really don't want, something that brings physical or emotional pain to us and so on. And now we got to put that into our equation. We got to, say, okay, well, that's worth the price of all these other things that I do. That's part of being a human being, and it's all worth it. So each of us has to make that evaluation for ourselves. So does anybody have any comments or questions before I continue on?
Yeah, I would like to say something. When you rationalize, you almost invariably start out on the wrong foot. If you follow back your rationale, you find out that when at the beginning of it, you had no foundation for it. It's just some kind of a wackiness that you got into a funk of some sort, and you rationalized everything from there on out. And I think that's probably what happened on the 6th. Everybody tried to rationalize themselves into the game that they were playing that got out of hand.
Yeah, maybe so. But if we go back to our text here, to the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, and we look at the 8 worldly concerns and looked at our rationalizations are steeped in those 8 worldly concerns. gain and loss, pleasure and pain, fame and bliss, praise and blame, fame and disgrace. So we see that we couch our rationalizations in those 8 things. That's how insidious those things are. We're trying to create permanence in our lives. Okay. Anybody else have a comment or question? Thank you, William. So this next part here is the characteristic of the karma and result of unshakable meditative concentration. Now, this is much more abstract. This takes some time over and over again, contemplating this. It's very unlikely that we're going to get this in one reading, in one contemplation. It's the kind of thing that we come back to year after year and so on, because it's very, very subtle, very, very subtle. So it says, this is the state of mind by practicing the cause, meditative concentration of equipoise. What is equipoise? Equipoise is being in that mindfulness state of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Remaining in that state, that's bodhicitta, the holy enlightened mind. That's the mind of all the enlightened ones. So whether it's the Buddha, or whether it's Jesus, or it's Mohammed, or it's Moses, or whatever great leader that you think of, whether it's a religious leader or political leader or philosophical leader or whatever, whoever, that to have that state of mind, that bodhicitta all the time, is to be in that state of meditative concentration. One will obtain the results born of meditative concentration. So to be in that equipoise, to be in that peacefulness. When we look at an image of the Buddha, for instance, what does that connote to us? Does that connote peace to us? Does that connote equipoise to us? Loving kindness and compassion. When we see that, when we see a picture of the Dalai Lama, for instance, when we see a picture of Pope Francis, what does that connote to us? Is it a blessing just to see, just to look at that image, to think of that being and what they represent? Does that bring that meditative concentration to us of equipoise, and that we feel uplifted, and that we can move about during our everyday with that, taking that equipoise with us? Or do we recognize that it stays with us for a time, but then slowly, it kind of fades away? Or maybe something happens, right away. We get in our car and we're driving, and somebody cuts us off and we cuss them out. And then all the good deeds that we did for the beginning part of the day are just blown away because of this moment of anger that you just had. And then to try and get that equipoise back, you have to go sit down someplace. You got to bring it all back together again. Or have you perfected your equipoise to the point where you can have that moment of anger, but that you don't lose the equipoise? The moment of anger just comes, it just goes, and you don't attach to the anger. You just let it go. And as long as you haven't pulled a trigger and killed somebody, and as long as you haven't done something that harms somebody, it just passes right through. But it's the holding on that becomes the problem. If it upsets us, that we lose our equipoise, So we work to get that equipoise. You know, if we meditate in the morning, we do our practice in the morning and we're feeling good and everything. And then throughout the whole rest of the day, that all the things that happen during the day, whatever we watch on television and so on like that, just doesn't upset us anymore. Because we become transcendent of those everyday, ordinary things that we used to get emotionally upset about. That we see the human condition as all this confused stuff, all this emotional, afflictive emotions. But then one who is transcendent of that can be in the midst of that, but not upset by it. They remain in their meditative concentration. They remain in their equipoise. So this is the unshakable meditative concentration. So then the next thing that we talk about with karma is, here we've been talking about the characteristics of it. So we've been breaking it down so that we can, comprehend it and so on. But then this next part is a little bit more obscure, is a little bit more abstract. And this is the idea of ascription, that we are ascribing this karma. It says ascription of karma means that you experience the results of the karma you create. Results will ripen in the skandhas relating to the actor and not to others. So this is a whole conversation to have for another time. We can spend days talking about this. Books are written about this, but our component parts, we are component beings. We're not just one thing. We're many things. We have a physical body, and that physical body can sense things and can perceive things. We have mental formations. We have a consciousness and so on. All these things and so on. So this karma is embedded into all this compounded nature that we become. And many of us, we relish in this. This is my personality. Oh, everybody loves me. Or, oh, everybody hates me. The ego will attach to anything. It'll attach to you loving me, and it'll also attach to you hating me. It'll feed off of that. It gives me a cause to think how great I am, but what fools they are that don't recognize it, and will create all the rationalizations of how wrong they are and how right I am, and so on like that. So this is the way the karma comes in, and we begin to believe these lies. We begin to believe our non-virtue. And we become incorrigible. So without being too prejudiced about any of this, judgmental about this, you have to think about this. You have to meditate on this. And like I said, it's for another time to talk in greater detail. But just recognize that this karma comes in and to all these parts of our lives and to part of our being. These skandhas, as they're called, these heaps, these aggregates of what it is to be a human being. It permeates all of that. And we have to cleanse all of that. We have to let all that go. So that's the conversation we could have about that. So then let's move on to the next thing, because karma has a strict result. It has a strict result because one will experience happiness and suffering without mistake through the results of virtuous or non-virtuous karma. One will experience happiness through the accumulation of virtue, or by accumulating non-virtue, one will experience the result of suffering. So, in other words, you can't do good things and have bad results to that. Good things will result in good things. Bad things will result in bad things. You may rationalize them to say that those bad things are good things because of the story that you've woven about your life and so on. You can be confused about that. You can twist that around, your rationalizations. But when you look at this purely, you examine this purely, you see that good begets good and bad becomes bad. This is part of the dualistic nature of being a human being, an ordinary human being. However, we can become an enlightened human being who can bring the good and the bad onto the path of being a human being and allow that to become neutralized. And then we're going around that spiral and getting closer and closer and closer to becoming one of the enlightened beings. That we're becoming enlightened as we move through that process. Slowly, we're gaining levels, stages of that enlightenment. Being able to see how we can do those things all at the same time. Then we see that this phenomenal nature all around us is all dualistic. It's the natural state of phenomena, is this dualism. It's the natural state of being a human being. But a human being also has this true nature that is indestructible within themselves, that is superior, that is supreme, that is beyond this dualistic nature. It is non-conceptual. The essence of it is non-conceptual. To say what it is impossible. However, we can experience it. We experience it through our meditations, through these practices, through these prayers. And it doesn't have to be that we do it as a Buddhist experience. It can be a Christian experience. It can be a Jewish experience. It can be a Hindu experience. It can be an Islamic experience. It can be an atheistic experience, a humanistic experience. But we have this true nature that is indestructible. And so then the dualism is still there, but we're not attached to it. We don't have aversion to it. We can fall down into it as long as we're a human being, as long as we're still breathing. We can fall backwards into it. Or we can work to sustain, to maintain our virtuousness and remain in nirvana, to remain above that ocean of suffering. That we're in this temporary state of nirvana. And maybe we can be so such the embodiment of that equipoise, of that nature of true nature, that when we die, we don't even recognize that we lost our body. That we're in that spiritual state that we don't even recognize that our body is gone. The material is gone. So that's what we talk about, a living Buddha. Those who are in that state. And there's many that we know about. There's many, and maybe you know some now. Maybe you've read about some. Maybe you've met some whose presence is so powerful, so blissful, so calm. They don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but they're just at peace, what we would call peace. So the strict result is saying that, yes, there is this law of reciprocity, and good begets good and bad begets bad, or non-virtue, suffering gets suffering, and so on. And we have to take responsibility for that. We are human beings, and the characteristic of human beings that is unique, when we looked at the 6 realms of human beings last week, we looked at that, and the unique characteristic of human beings is we can change. All the other parts of being a human being can't change. The deva can't change. The jealous God can't change. The animal can't change. The hell beings can't change. The hungry ghost can't change. They can recognize their situation and they can rise above. They can work to liberate themselves, to work themselves through that dualistic nature to be able to get to a point of being a human being. And to be a pure human being, a complete human being, has many words. You know, we talk about it as being a bodhisattva. You know, in the Jewish, they talk about being a mensch. Oh, he's such a human being, he's a mensch. You know, and I know other traditions have other words for it. Saints, great beings, you know, different cultures, different, national, languages have different words for it. But it's a complete human being. We talk about that we have 3 bodies. We have our physical body, we have our intellectual body, but we have our spiritual body. And the ordinary beings who are caught in the ocean of suffering don't recognize the spiritual body. Or if they do, it's so elusive to them, it's so abstract to them, they don't have any way to relate to it, that they may have a yearning for it, but they don't have a way to develop their awareness of it. And then when we do, now we become a complete human being. Sri Aurobindo said, this is the superhuman being. This is the Superman or the Superwoman that has a good physical body, that is able to be developed and has a good intellectual mind that can be developed and has a good spirituality that can be developed. And the 3 are intertwined with each other. It's like a 3-legged stool that will stand on its own. So then the next part here, talking about karma, is the increase from the small, that there can be an increase from the small. So what this means is, I'll read this, it says, maturation of a big result from a small karma. So from a small action comes a great big result. For example, regarding non-virtuous deeds, which we've been talking about, it is said that one will experience a kalpa in hell realm for each instant of a negative thought. So what that means is, if you go around thinking bad things, if you go around doing bad things to people and thinking bad things about people and everything, you will be in a constant hell. It's like you're just suffused with demons all around you. You can't think clearly. Everybody is against you. Everything is out to get you. The police are out to get you. Brothers whose sisters you harmed and so on are out to get you. People that you stole from are out to get you. Your life becomes one of constant looking over your shoulder and constant fear and like that. So by doing small things, big things can result. Likewise, if you've been doing bad things, but then you recognize that you have been doing these and you make amends for this, there is a system by which you can do that. And if you do that and you are heartfelt with that, and you're committed to that, you have devotion into that, then all the negative things that were done can be brought onto the path and neutralized. There may be a price to pay, but because you have gone through this recognition, because you have gone through this redemption, and because you are willing to accept responsibility for it, that the mitigation of those terrible things becomes easier for you to be able to assimilate, to bring into your life, to bring into your world, and so on. We talk about that there are 4 powers of purification. And there's a whole practice about this, the Vajrasattva practice. And these 4 powers to purify non-virtues. So the first is to recognize that you did something and that you have regret for it, remorse. So the first one is recognizing that there was a non-virtue, you have regret. And the second thing is that you resolve that you're not going to do this again. You recognize that it was bad, you're sorry you did it, you resolve that you're not going to do it. And then the third thing is that you apply a remedy to that, an antidote, as if that was a poison, that was an illness, that was something that you took, a poison pill, and you recognize that it's going to kill you, that it's going to annihilate your peace of mind to your life and so on, but that there is this remedy, there is this antidote that you can apply that will neutralize that negativity. So you apply that remedy, that how would you say, the atonement. And then there is the reliance on the system to be able to gird ourselves, to protect ourselves, not to fall back and do that non-virtue again. That we use the structure of the constant reminding, of the constant practicing, of the constant mindfulness, of the equipoise, and we rely on that to protect us from going backwards, to falling back down into the ocean of suffering, that we have attained a nirvana level and not to become contaminated by the things that may present itself, but we're not full enough to be seduced by those things any longer. We rely on the system. We rely on our practice. So through that, the small can come into the big, or the big can be transformed by the small, whichever way you want to look at it. But it's the point that by doing something can what might appear to be a small thing can have a very big result. And then this next point of inevitability. Now, this is getting a little bit more subtle, and this is controversial. We need to talk about it, need to think about this. This inevitability means that unless the antidote to a karma appears, the antidote to an action appears, the result will come without waste or loss, even though limitless kalpas have passed. A kalpa is a very, 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 very long time period. In the Eastern philosophy, they talk about kalpas like eons. Karma may lie dormant for a long time, but somehow when it meets with the proper conditions, the result will come out. Thus, one will become afraid of the suffering of samsara and gains confidence in karma and the result. So in other words, we can be good people all our lives doing good things, and we really can't say that, I really did any of those 10 non-virtuous things, with a complete completion of the karma. I never really meant to do that. I was really a good person. I may have done some bad things, but they weren't terrible things. And I see what I did wrong and I make amends for it. But then something happens in your life that really changes your life, but that something that happens was a negative thing. But that's that karma coming up that is ripening from past lives, from past existences, not as Lance or as Tom or as Gary or Zara, but just part of the human experience. And that we're just vibrating with, we're resonating with that. And that comes up and we hold on to that. We attach to that. And then we have to suffer the consequences of that. And it may not make sense to us. And maybe we blame it on God. Maybe we blame it on the devil. Maybe we find somebody else to blame it on, but it wasn't me that did it. Until we finally take responsibility for it and say, okay, this is what's happened to me. I have to take responsibility for it. I have to live through this, and I have to bring it onto the path and find a way to make happiness out of this. Otherwise, it just crushes us. It crushes our spirituality. This is what our spirituality grows on. In other words, it becomes the food for our spirituality to grow. We grow on good deeds, but we grow on good deeds that are brought as bad deeds. The image of the lotus flower, this pure, beautiful lotus that rises above the ocean of suffering. But meanwhile, the stalk, the stem of that beautiful lotus goes down into the filth, the muck and the mire that's in the bottom of that body of water that has been feeding this beautiful lotus. So that defilement, that muck and mire has been transformed into this beautiful flower. So when we say, Om Mani Padme Hum, behold the jewel in the lotus, that is the visualization of that process, of our becoming liberated in spite of that very humble beginning. The inevitability of that. We are all here for reasons that we can't fathom. We are all here because we are in this ocean of suffering, and we may have made the best lives out of it that we can. And we've done good things, but still we have emotions. We still have fear. We still have these concerns. We still can be pulled downwards. We still have ignorance, all these things. And we're working to be able to liberate ourselves from this. And we do that through helping other beings. So we're using the inevitability of our karma to help other beings, which then helps ourselves. This is how we transform ourselves, how we live the enlightenment, is by doing for other beings. We can do good for ourselves and not have concern for other beings. We can do that, but then we become attached to our pridefulness. We're having independent, selfish enlightenment. We're not doing it for the benefit of others. But when we are giving ourselves away, being generous and sharing, this is the way of the great beings. This is the way of the bodhisattvas. This is the way of the mensches of the world, of the saints of the world. Saints weren't made saints because they didn't do good things for other people, that they were selfish. They always suffered to help other beings. So the inevitability of that. And then very quickly, there is this, one of the things to think about is that there is this communal aspect of this. Here we are, people that live in America, and many people in the world would think of us as gods, the way in which we live and so on. And so many people we would think of as living in hells and living in hungry ghost realms and so on, in the way they live. Some people live as animals and so on, like that. Human beings, I'm talking about, living lives like that and so on. But there is a collective karma There's a collective karma for us to be in this place together at this time. But there's also collective karma. We think of this as being good, but what about people that go down in an airplane together? What about people that get killed in automobile accidents and so on? Strangers colliding with one another and things like that. Calamities, weather calamities and so on like that are all part of the collective karma of great people who are together, who are sharing this particular karma for reasons that we can't really know. However, we can have a glimpse of that if we give ourselves the ability to transcend our attachment to what we think we know or what we think we can't know. So we have to allow ourselves that moment of transcendence to be able to get to these points beyond our human consciousness and bring in our true nature. And we find that there are many things there that as human beings, we're just not capable of being able to understand. And we just let that go. We don't need to know everything. As long as we're holding on to the idea that we do, we're causing ourselves suffering. So it really becomes very simple. However, getting there takes a lot of work. So doing the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma every day, reciting that, helps us to remain mindful of this every day. And this is something that all the Buddhist practitioners do, whether they're everyday practitioners, whether they're occasional practitioners, whether they are monks, whether they're teachers, whether they're the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama, this is part of the Dalai Lama's routine. And all the other great monks, all the other great monastics, and all the other great practitioners, the lay practitioners. You don't have to be a monastic to become enlightened. It's a different path to get there, but it's not the only path. It has its own difficulties. So it's not a requirement for enlightenment to become a monastic. We all can become enlightenment in this lifetime. So the story of Milarepa reveals that to us. So that's a conversation for another time. So this is the conversation, the discussion on karma, cause and result. So we have a few minutes. Does anybody have questions or comments?
Yeah, Lance, I just want to say that you're absolutely right. The 4 thoughts that turn the mind can be a wonderful practice just to start with. If you have no other direction, just that can be a daily practice that when you get up in the morning, do some meditation, and that can be easily a 20-30 minute practice that can turn into an hour, 2-hour practice. How much you want to sit there and contemplate on those things, and we really need to contemplate those things on a daily basis to keep us humble. We tend to let our egos and our pride just, run rampant, but really keeps us humble by constantly reminding ourselves of how fortunate we are to be here, how fortunate we are to have come to these wonderful teachings and to have this wonderful karmic connection between all of us here. There's a reason why we're all here and doing what we're doing. There's a deep karmic connection here, especially between Dharma brothers and sisters. And thank you very much for what you're doing.
Well, you're welcome and thank you. Yes, it's and we invite all to be our guests, even the gods and the demigods. So is this coming together in any way? You know, for a number of us have been through this, now 2 or 3 times, and was there any clarity, a little more clarity? Did a synapse close or a glimpse come up? Ed turned his microphone on. Good.
Yeah, the glimpses come up. Glimpses come up, but they kind of fade in and out.
Okay. What do you think would stabilize them?
I don't know, but I'm beginning to understand why people do this repetitively,
Why do you think?
because it makes the glimpses longer and wider, I guess.
Well,
It sticks a little better each time.
is it necessary to do that?
Well, for me, it seems to be.
Yeah. Why?
Maybe I'm a slow learner. I don't know. I don't know.
So if I can just not twist it, but just try and put it, are you seeing a value in this?
Yes. Well, at times it seems, as Gene or somebody said recently, it seems pretty abstract. But it gradually gets more concrete. At least that's been my experience.
Right. Do you find yourself thinking about, what's happening in your life on a day-to-day basis, in terms of the Buddhism and in terms of the Dharma?
Sometimes in the middle of the night.
You mean in the middle of the night of sleep?
Well, when sleep's interrupted. Yeah, I don't, I'm not, Tom, is just talking about how meaningful this is and how fundamental it is. Those are my words, Tom, but, and I'm not to that point yet, but I'm closer than I was.
Are you enjoying spirituality?
I don't think of spirituality in terms of enjoyment necessarily. So I don't know. Spirituality is something that I'm seeking to have more of and get closer to, but I don't think of it as in enjoyment terms. I just think of it as trying to get closer to what is. Ask somebody else a question. How's your shoulder, Dora?
Thank you for asking. That's very kind of you. It is significantly better. I am getting a cervical MRI next week just to make sure there's not structural impingement on a nerve at the base of my neck causing referred pain. But I'm pretty sure I've got 3 messed up rotator cuff tendons in the front of my shoulder that are causing all the awesomeness running down the arm. So all the physical suffering right now, but even like these teaching, like even actually dealing with physical discomfort, this is helpful kind of in kind of bridging tonight's conversation, where, because I'm trying not to take pain meds right now to mask what I'm feeling. So having to really tap into mindfulness, being present, and recognizing the physical pain for what it is as a temporary state. So what I'm saying is I'm trying to use it as an opportunity for my own growth right now. As a silver lining and an opportunity. So I have a positive association with the pain, Ed, like a positive pairing of it versus hating my body, being in my body right now.
Can I recommend a book to Ed and everybody else who would like it? But it's called The Transformation of Suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's on in Amazon. It might well be, but it's written by the same person who did the translation of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, Kenshin Rinpoche. And it's one of the great support books to read that I think will help, this transformation of suffering, because one of the parts of transforming suffering brings joy, and joy is one of the 4 immeasurable qualities. To find joy in our lives is one of the things that the enlightened mind is composed of. So it's important to have that kind of realization, that kind of breakthrough. So The Transformation of Suffering is a very good book that will help that. Oh, there, Tom's holding it up. So it might be a Dharma Surya, I'm not sure, but it's likely to be on Amazon.
All right, thank you.
It's not a big book. How many pages has it got? What, maybe about 125 pages?
A little bit less than 200.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's a quick read. Once you get into it, it's a quick read.
Wonderful book.
And it's the kind of book you read it once a year or something.
All right, thanks for the suggestion.
You're welcome. Gene, I don't want to take too much time here after 9 o'clock, but do you have any comments? Because you're the newbie here. I just want to make sure that you have something to say about this. What do you think?
Well, I'm a little reluctant to have anything to say because it's still very puzzling to me. There are things in here that we talked about tonight that are troubling because they're reminiscent of, the early Puritans believed that if you were a good person, then you had a good life. And it sounded a little bit like that was what they were saying. And I'm not sure that I see how that works. Being a good person, that's certainly better than being a bad person, and it's good for you for the long run. But I don't know that it translates into good things. That's a little troubling to me. And it just sounds like, the good know who they are, sort of,
Okay.
But I've got to do a lot of thinking about this.
Okay, good. Did you receive that text that I sent to you? I sent you a chapter.
I did, and I'm sorry I didn't write you back. I have a hard time with email. I have it, and I'm going to share it with Ed because it's I see him often, but it's
Do you have the ability to print something like that, or would you prefer that I print it and mail it to you?
No, I think the way you sent it was good because I have it on here and then I can read it and I can enlarge it. And that's my big deal.
All right, because I'm going to send you the chapter on karma, cause, and result, so I'll send you the chapter on that. So, and these come from the book called Learning Buddhism, which was written by Gampopa, who is our our spiritual director at Dharma Surya.
But I hope you'll send the dictionary along with it.
Well, you gotta put your toe in the water sometime.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate your nurturing. Say, I will not be able to be here next week. I have one Monday a month. I have another meeting.
I see. Well, thanks for letting us know. All right. Well, I'll be sure to send you that, and you can always tune in and catch what we talk about on YouTube. If you like, I can send you the link for anything that you've missed.
Yeah, I probably won't do that. I'm not very technical. I'm not very
Okay.
technological.
All right. Well, then, unless somebody has something that you'd like to say before we close, we'll do our dedications.
I recommend that Gene go along, focus on the practice and the teachings here and ignore the Puritans. They did a lot of horrible things to each other. So I'm not sure they're a good reference point, but that's only my opinion.
No, that was my point. I don't think they're a good reference point. And I just am seeing these similarities, but I think there's a lot of things. I mean, we're getting sentences where there are whole books written about one concept and things. So I realize that there's, I'm getting just the most superficial view, and this is my first pass at it. So,
Okay.
but thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. So we go to our prayer book, and we'll read the short dedication prayer on page 20, 21, and 22.
Oh, one quick thing, Lance,
Yes.
for this book, if you go to Vajra Publications directly, they'll have it right there on the website.
Oh, good.
And
Thanks for, yes. Thank you. Yeah. Vajra, V-A-G-R-A. No, V-A-J-R-A. Vajra Publications. They're the publisher. So they publish a lot of our Buddhist books and so on.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. Okay. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Trikampa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, yogins, yoginis, and dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the three times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate word of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Sravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Mars and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings with my body, speech, and mind. May the attachments to fame, may the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, ah, hom. Om, ah, hom. Om, ah, hom. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Soho, thank you. Soho,
No.
thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Lance.
Yep.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
Lance,
you.
Lance, I was gonna ask, what are the practices like that are gonna be going on this week from Thursday through Sunday at the temple? Like any in-person practices, or are they just virtual?
I don't know of any that are happening this weekend.
Tom, do you know?
Why, did you hear that there were something?
No, there's no teachings by anything, but like I said, if you'd like to come by, I'll
Open it,
gladly
okay.
open up the center for you. You can meditate, you can do
Okay.
prostrations.
Oh, are you still in Virginia?
No, I actually drove all night. I got back at 1 o'clock in the morning, but I'm actually going to fly back in. I know I was going to fly back in to spend a couple more days with my sister before she goes to California. So Thursday night, I'm going to fly in. So I was just seeing if there was something else that I would, have an opportunity for in person. So I can, Tom, I can connect with you and see if
Call me.
that would allow. Okay, perfect. I'll do that. That sounds
Call.
good.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Lance. I just wanted to ask. That's all.
Okay, good.
That
All
makes
right, well,
sense.
good. Well, maybe we'll get to see each other. I'll see what, maybe Saturday I can come down.
Okay.
If
I'll
you
stay
wanna do
connected.
something. Okay.
Okay. Thank
right.
you.
All right, good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good
All
night,
right, William and
everyone.
Bhavani, how are you guys?
Yeah, how you guys doing?
William? Well,
There it goes.
all right.
So, we're doing pretty good. I got, the middle of this week, I go in and, for my doctor's visit find out whether or not, how my, hip's going.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm real hippie now.
Oh, good. Okay.
They got me all, they really screwed me.
Well, are you being facetious on that, or they screwed you good or screwed you bad?
I got two screws there, so they could have been good and bad. I don't know.
I see.
You know how this karma goes.
Are you doing any physical therapy?
No, I'm not supposed to be doing anything until I see him.
I see. All right. Well, good luck.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, then I'm going to sign off.
Lonnie's doing pretty good.
Good.
So you guys doing all right?
Yep. Doing
Yeah.
fine.
You look like you had a whole lot of fun over the weekend there. I saw a bunch of pictures there.
Yeah, it was nice. It was very nice. I hope that you're feeling well, and maybe you want to make a trip up, and we still threaten to come down and see you.
Hey, the room's always there.
Okay. All right. Well.
I might even let you use my sleeping bag.
You're
All
much
right.
too kind.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so.
All right. Well, I won't say anything smart about that.
No, and I'm not saying anything. I'm trying to go with the thing that you were reading about there tonight.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You know, I'm trying to keep my mouth shut more all the time.
Yeah.
I kind of have to do that with my wife. You know? So
All right, brothers. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good
everyone.
night. Be
Good night.
safe.
All right. Thursday night, we'll be back on with Medicine Buddha, and Friday night back on with our regular scheduled programs.
All right. All right.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Good night.
Be
Bye.
safe.